Thousands of golfers are using the wrong irons for their game. I'm going to share with you 3 reasons why this might be, and if you identify with them, you might have the wrong irons for your game. Reason number 1 is all to do with head makeup, and what I mean by that is the way that the clubs are built. In my hand here, I've got 3 different styles of clubs. I've got a bladed iron, I've got a cavity iron, and then in the middle I've got a hollowed body which looks a bit like a bladed iron, but it's got a cavity in the head. Each of these irons is designed to do something differently, and what we would maybe say is that we would have a low handicapper iron, a mid handicapper iron and a high handicapper iron. There is an argument though that a lot of people make that if you learn with a blade, everything else becomes easy. And my thoughts on that are that these irons are very hard to hit because of the way that these are built, with their thin top line, their smaller heel to toe profile, their smaller sole, and generally lack of forgiveness. They're gonna be very punishing if you don't hit it out of the center. As where if we look at the other end of the spectrum where we see the cavity iron sitting, we see something now that is totally different to that blade. It has a larger sole, it has a larger head profile from heel to toe, it has a thicker top line, and we see a lot more weight positioned at the bottom and around the golf club. So if you were a beginner or a high handicapper, what this is going to offer you is a lot of forgiveness. Now that's great because if you are seeing the ball get up in the air and actually flying towards your target, even on a missed strike, that's going to be a little bit more encouraging. You can work over time to get your strikes better and progress down the line, but I would say it's going to be better than trying to learn with a blade that if you aren't getting those good strikes are going to be dropping out of the sky and are going to be soul crushing, and ultimately it could lead to you not wanting to carry on the game because you think it, is really hard. As where picking the right iron for your game, you could see that you get a little bit more help where it's needed. So picking the right one could be crucial to actually you seeing some good shots. And even if I just hit some shots now, also tell you a little bit about the data, we see a lot of different things from these. If I hit the mid handicapper one, as we would class it, the hollowed club, we might see that these are maybe a bit more of a distance club as well. They sort of mix a little bit of forgiveness with a little bit of distance as well, which is something maybe that you might need. That felt beautiful. So that club then has gone 184 yards. Now, if I get the blade in and hit the same shot, we might see that the blade actually goes a little bit shorter because blades generally have a little bit more of a traditional loft to them. We've seen that irons get a little bit stronger and they tend to go a little bit further when we get into something like the hollow bodies or maybe a cavity iron, as where with the blades they've stayed quite traditional. Ooh, not quite my best strike, and all of a sudden I'm not going to see as much distance. 178 yards that's gone, so all of a sudden I've now dropped 6 yards, which doesn't sound a lot, but if you keep doing that repeatedly, and especially when you're going up into your longer irons and you're not getting them up in the air, you might see dramatic drop-offs. As where something like the one that is aimed for the higher handicapper here, that has that bigger head, more weight on it, and generally we will see a little bit more of a stronger loft on these, will maybe go even that little bit further. So all it's doing is aiding you in the game. If you think about what we want to do with our irons, we want to hit them at a target, a green, but we've still got to get them up in the air, and we've also got to get distance. So this one generally helps you in that package. And that just felt like it came out quicker, and it's gone actually 180 yards. But let me show you this. It's a 7 iron, as where those two were 6 irons. So with that slightly stronger loft and with that little bit more forgiveness, you're able to get the ball out there. So have a look at the clubs that you're using in your bag. Have you got the right ones for your ability in the game? If you're a low handicapper, you probably want to look for something with a little less cavity, more bladed. Like mid handicappers, you want a blend of both worlds. But if you're a high handicapper, get something that has got a lot of cavity, it's got a lot of perimeter weighting, and it's got a lot of weight down at the bottom. that's going to help you get that ball in the air and help you with those off-centered strikes. Let's take a look at another reason why you might have the wrong irons. Before we get into the next reason, guys, I want you to hit the subscriber button down there for me. It's totally free to do. I want your game to improve. You're going to do it by getting your free tips and lessons here on the channel. Hit it. Let's take a look at the next reason. So another part of where people are using the wrong irons is all to do with set makeup. And what I mean by that is that I see a lot of 3 irons, 2 irons, and then maybe sometimes I see a lot of duplicate wedges. Now, if you go to your professional and you are able to get a gapping session, what you're able to do is get the right clubs for your bag, because what we might see is that you might need help up at the top end of your bag. So you might be a player who's still got a 3 iron in your bag, but you're struggling to launch the golf ball. So that's where something like this, the hybrid, could come involved. If you had that 3 iron in your bag and you didn't have space for the hybrid in your bag, you're doing yourself a disservice. On the other end of the scale as well, we need to know how many wedges we want to have in our bag, because what I would see is, again, that people maybe stop at a pitching wedge and then go straight to maybe a 56 or a 60. And with modern day clubs, a lot of the irons are getting stronger. So we would maybe see that in the past a pitching wedge was 47 or 48 degrees. Nowadays, they're roughly round about 44 on average. And if you go straight to maybe a sand wedge from your old set that you've just put in and kept in there, you might have a 56 degree, that sand wedge, let's say. So you've got a huge gap up to there. You've got 12 yards up to where that 44 would be, and you've got 12 degrees, as where 12 degrees gap is going to be a huge distance gap. We might see that your pitching wedge, let's call it, goes 110, but that sand wedge that you hit actually only goes 70 through the air. So you've got 40 yards of gap there, which we all know the half wedges or the 3/4 wedges are a little bit finicky to hit. So actually gapping all your clubs out and making sure you've got the right ones up at the top of the bag and at the bottom of the bag is a big must. Also, these things, we see a lot of players with driving irons, and I think because a lot of the tour pros have these round open time and things like that, so manufacturers were really pumping them out, and we see a lot of people with them in the bag. They are sexy looking things, and if you can hit them well, they're good, but they're very hard to hit well. And even myself, I love the look of this thing, but you know what? I don't get enough spin, and I can't use it off the fairway, off the tee, as well as I do my hybrid. So I've succumbed to the fact that this is better for my game, and that is what stays in my bag. I'd love to have this one in, but I just can't handle it. So you've got to make sure that you're picking the right set makeup. Go and get a fitting, see what the most lofted iron is you need, and see what the least lofted iron is you need, and then work your bag set up around that. You'll be able to pick the right wedges, and you'll be able to get the right amount of woods and hybrids, and see that you've not got any big gaps and wasted shots. So the third and final reason is all to do with that little dot in there and a couple of other things. Now, for those who don't know, that little red dot that you've just seen is all to do with the angle that the club lies at. So each club has an either standard lie or a flat or an upright lie. And if you're just buying clubs off the shelf, or you've just been given a set or whatever it may be, they might not have been made or tailored to you. Now, when we go into a shop, let's say wherever you are in the world, and you go to a golf superstore, the irons on the rack will be a standard fit, unless they're trying to sell some old ones that they're trying to get rid of or whatever. But you'll buy a standard set, and there will be a standard lie, standard length, and whatever flex they come in, regular or stiff. And that's another thing that we've got to look out for. But firstly, the lie can actually determine the flight of the golf ball, because as I place this golf ball in, if you had a club that was the wrong lie angle for you, and it would maybe have to be a little bit excessive, but even so, if you had something where the club was too upright and almost sitting a little bit more like this, what will generally happen as that club comes to meet the golf ball now, we might see the heel of the club dig in, which would actually close the face, and the ball would go off to the left hand side. And vice versa, if you had a club that was too flat, we would actually see the toe of the club would start to dig into the ground, raising the heel towards the ball, getting a missed strike there, and the ball would actually go out towards the right hand side of your target. So you could make a really nice golf swing, but if your club isn't the right lie angle and it impacts the ground a little bit differently, you actually might see that you're hitting a poor shot and you think, well, I've swung it good, but why is it not working? We can use this into our favours as well, because if you are a slicer, maybe a little bit more upright could help you, because that would straighten that slice out a little bit. Or if you want a little bit more fade, you can get them a tiny bit flatter to see that we might just get a little bit toey and get that fade going as well. Also, length of the golf club is massive. It determines where you're going to get it out of the toe, the middle, or the heel, because if something is too long, what we would tend to see, if you think about it, if it gets longer and longer and longer and longer, you're pushing that heel towards the center of the golf ball, and vice versa. If it's a shorter golf club, you're pulling that toe towards the center of the golf ball. So by actually getting a club that is fit for you, go and see your PGA professional, and actually getting something that they can bend them if they're cast clubs a couple of degrees. If they're forged, it's a lot easier, and they can take length off and add length on. You can actually start to get an iron that will work in and around your favor. So 3 reasons why we need to make sure we've got the right irons. Have you got the right head model for your game? Have you got the right setup for your game? And also, more importantly, make sure that those irons are fit to you. We're all different shapes, sizes, swing it differently. We're not all standard. So we've got to get something that actually works for us. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed that video. Make sure you do subscribe, hit that button down below, and we'll see you in another one very soon.